Hey everyone, in this video I want to walk through Lab 2. So in Lab 2 what we're doing is we're completing those initial configuration tasks and then we're going to install the IIS web server role along with a couple services and we'll create a basic web page so that we can use that role. So part 1 of Lab 2 will have us walk through this initial configuration task, and this comes up every time we start up Server 2008 until we tell it not to show it anymore. So if you haven't, go ahead and start up your VM, and when the VM starts up you can log in. After a moment or two this should pop up after everything loads. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and activate Windows. So this is going to be using the product key that we obtained from DreamSpark. So I have my product key here, copy it and paste it in. So if you're lucky, it will just go ahead and work. If you're like me, I've activated a few times, so it makes me call the phone number usually so that I can verify that I am not pirating the software or anything like that. Okay, so if you do run into that issue, what you'll need to do is open up a command prompt and then type in SLUI4. This will bring out the Windows activation. You want to click the country nearest to you, which would be United States. Okay. That'll give you a phone number. You'll call that phone number and then it'll read back some numbers to you that you'll fill in this box. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick and then I'll come back. Alright, so after dealing with the activation over the phone, I was able to get activated successfully. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and set the time zone. So we are not in the Pacific time zone, we're in the Eastern time zone. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to Eastern time, -5 UTC, and have it automatically adjust for daylight savings time. Configuring network, this one should already be configured correctly. For right now we're going to do DHCP, and that's provided by VirtualBox or whatever hypervisor we're using. If you don't have an IP address here, or if you can't connect to the internet, then let me know and we may need to work through setting up a static IP. Change the computer name. So if we click on provide computer name and domain, we can come down here and click change, and we can change the computer name to something else. The format that I want to use is our CCUID, so mine is CA-NANCE -server, and let's change the work group to be in the coastal work group. So you can click OK there. Okay, so you get this welcome to the coastal work group message box. You can click OK there. It's going to ask you to go ahead and restart to apply the changes. We are going to restart later after we apply the rest of these changes. Okay, so let's go ahead and enable automatic updating and feedback. That's just a good practice to make sure that updates get applied as soon as they are available. We also want to click on download and install updates. We should have all of these already. You may come into a situation where there's one available though. So if there is, go ahead and install that. Okay, once that finishes, then we'll go ahead and do the restart before we install any roles or services. Okay, so once you get back in, we want to go ahead and add a feature, and we're going to install the Telnet client. So we're first presented with a list of all the features, and we can scroll down to find what we're looking for, and what we want to install is the Telnet client. This will give us the ability to use Telnet from the command prompt. Okay, so we'll click install. Alright, once that's finished, we can test and verify that that worked. So if we go to command prompt, let's try to go to Telnet and open up google.com on port 80. Okay, so we're connected. And if I type in get slash, it should give back to me basically the source of the web page, which really is very difficult to read through, but illustrates anyways that we did get Telnet installed. Excellent. So the next thing we want to do is continue on in here. We want to enable remote desktop. You can see right now it's disabled. And we want to choose the one that's more secure. So allow connections only from computers running remote desktop with network level authentication. Okay, so that's going to create an exception in the firewall. That's fine. We'll click apply and OK. And then the last thing we want to do is go ahead and configure the Windows firewall and just make sure that it is set up for public networks, and it is. So at this point you would want to go ahead and take a screenshot of this initial configuration task and put that into your PDF document that you'll submit at the end. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and move on to part 2 and install the server role for web server IIS. Now we can do that from Server Manager. Server Manager also normally pops up after the operating system loads. If it doesn't, there's an icon right down here that you can click on, or you can access it from the Administrative Tools Server Manager. So what we want to do is install a role, and a role is like a primary service that's provided by this server. So to install a role, we can click on the node and click on Add Roles, or right click on it and click Add Roles. And we click Next, and what we want to do is pick the role that we would like to install. So the one we want to do is Web Server IIS. IIS is Internet Information Services, and that's what that is Microsoft's web server. So if we click the checkbox, we can read through a little bit of information about IIS. When we're ready, go ahead and click Next. And for our use case, we can just go ahead and select the defaults, or pretty much leave this as it is, and click Next. Okay, so once we have that, we can click Install and go ahead and run through the installation. So after that installation finishes, we get a nice summary of everything that has been installed. And as long as it says installation succeeded, we should be good to go. So we can close out of this. And you'll notice that there is a new node underneath roles here in the Server Manager. So if we click on that, Server Manager shows us a brief summary of some of the events that have happened. We haven't used IIS yet, so there are no events. We can see all the system services associated with it, and if they're running or if they're stopped, and what their startup type is. There's a best practice analyzer that you can use to make sure that you're adhering to the best practices. And then we can see the role services, which is the defaults that we accepted, but we can see which ones are installed, and if we'd like to, we can go back and install them as well. Okay, so for now we can go ahead and close out of Server Manager, and what I want to do is open up the IIS Manager. So that was added under Administrative Tools once we installed IIS. So you can find it here, click on it, and this is where we can do the administrative task for IIS. So again, it's got this node sort of layout similar to the Server Manager, and the first node that we'll look at is our server itself. So you'll notice that it's using the same name that we assigned to the server earlier in the initial configuration task. So if we expand this node, we can click on Sites and see all of the different websites that are being hosted by this web server. Now right now, by default, there's only one that's started, and we can see that it is called the default website. We can change that name if we'd like to. Its status is started and is listening and serving the HTTP protocol on port 80. And the path is the system drive, inetpub, www, root. So that would be the root directory of our web server. system drive is a system-wide environment variable that usually refers to the C drive, unless your installation was non-standard and maybe done on a different drive. So what we can do is we can open that up. You can either type in C drive here and run, or you can even use that system drive percent slash inetpub slash www root and press enter. And what you'll see in here is there is an IIS start HTML document and also a welcome image. So we can pull that up and take a look at it. And this is just basically some default files that are placed in the website when it's created. We can test and make sure that our web server is functioning correctly by browsing to our website. So we can open up Internet Explorer, or we can also open up Firefox since we installed that, and just go to http://localhost, and you'll see what we're being served here is this IIS start page. And that IIS start page, let's open that up with Notepad++. That IIS start page references or uses an image tag that brings in that welcome.png that we saw. So that's why we're seeing that here. Okay, if you expand the sites node, you'll see all of your sites, and we can expand this default website. And we can see a few options in here. So if we wanted to, we could configure SSL, and we would need to go back and have it bind to port 443 so that it was also listening for HTTPS. We can set up authentication if we want to password protect the website. Default document is interesting and worth looking at. You can see in here that these are the default documents that are served up when a file is not specified. So when I type in localhost/, I didn't do anything to tell it to go to the iisstart.htm file and serve me that. So what happens is when you don't provide a file here, IIS looks in this list, and the first one it comes across that is actually available in that web root, it's going to serve up. So in this case, there was no default.htm or .asp, there was no index.htm or HTML, so it served up the iisstart.htm. Now we can verify that by coming in here, and let's just create a new document. HTML tag, and we'll just say hi. So let's save that, and we want to save that in that www root. So if it doesn't start you up there, you just want to go to the C drive, inetpub, www root, and let's save this as index and change the save as type to all types, and that will allow us to put the file extension on here. So we'll say index.html. Okay, so now if we come back over here and refresh this page, you'll see that the first site that it came across in that default documents was index.html, so it served that one instead of iis.htm. Now, of course, if we want to, we can be explicit and we can say iisstart.htm and still get that page back. So what I want for you to do now is just to come in here and create a basic web page. So on this basic web page, there's just a few things that I'm looking for. At a minimum, I'm looking for your name and an H1 tag and then 3 hyperlinks. So I provided some source code over in the lab document if you want to take a look at that. But basically we'll fill this out real quick. The title tag, close the head, create a body tag, and in the body tag We'll have an H1 tag with our name. And then let's start an unordered list with a few list items. With hyperlinks in them. So we want to include 3 of those. Okay, and then maybe just a brief blurb about what it is that we're providing here in the hyperlink. So, welcome to my page. Some of my favorite Windows websites are. Okay, so if you save that, then we can come back over here. And since we saved that as index.html, we can just go to localhost. And if you refresh, you may need to in case it was cached, you should see the page that we just created. Alright, so for the lab, I just want for you to take a screenshot showing me that web page in Firefox or Internet Explorer like I did here. The contents of the default website's folder. So that would be this right here. The IIS manager, so basically a screenshot of this showing that you have this set up and it's running on your server. And then server manager. So we'll open server manager back up and we just want to show that IIS has been installed. So oops. After this populates, we should see IIS down in a list here underneath the roles node. Okay, so once you have those, go ahead and throw all of your screenshots into a PDF and submit that on Moodle. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or post in Slack. If not, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.